Hi, CX Insight Rockstars. Welcome to our new episode, How CX Insight Leaders Gain Leadership Buy-in by Thomas Barta. Hi, Thomas.
Hi, Frank. Good to see you.
Let me introduce you. Thomas is world's premier marketing leadership expert. He works at the intersection of customer focus and leadership, and he conducted world's largest study and interviewed over 68,000 executive assessments on what makes for an impactful customer leader. Thomas is a former McKinsey partner, and he is a co-author of the path-breaking book, The 12 Powers of Marketing Leaders. So, and because of this, I invited you, Thomas, to our session because the main pain point of customer insights leaders is actually to gain leadership buy-in. And I hope you can help the audience here in this matter. So maybe let's start off and start with your personal story. How did you end up actually becoming a guru for marketing leadership?
Thanks, Frank. So let's see if I'm a guru, but I'd say I know a thing about it. And it started pretty early. In fact, it started when I was 6, and I was the kid that loved advertising. I actually didn't watch a movie. I mainly watched advertising. My parents got crazy about it. And like, no, this is wrong, right? You got to, do other things. And no, I want to become an advertising guy. And my parents didn't like it. Then kids do what parents tell them not to do. So I became a marketer. I did everything you do in marketing, from pricing to sales to promotions to advertising, lots of market research, in fact. And then when I was the marketing director, that was the time when not everybody was a CMO. That marketing director was the top title. I got sick and tired of it because I said, you know what? We know what customers want, and then finance makes the decisions. I'm out of here. So I quit. And I joined McKinsey to tell CEOs how marketing really works and why customers are important. And then when I went to CEOs, I figured out they already knew that. So there wasn't much news. But of course, that was the moment when I saw myself in the form of my clients, so the marketers, the research people, sitting in a boardroom trying to convince the board of what's important, and then sometimes failing, and then sometimes people from finance and operations getting their way. And at McKinsey, I was always I was also the dean of McKinsey's internal leadership program, and that's where we teach McKinsey leaders, insight leaders, marketing leaders, transformation leaders. All these people have influence without authority. And I thought, wow, let's bring that back to marketers, and that's why I quit. Did the research that you mentioned on the success of marketing and insight leaders. In fact, as you said, we had 68,000 assessments to play with from INSEAD Business School, so we could crunch them. We built a neural network model, by the way, Frank, with your help, hugely useful, where we try to figure out what the real reasons are, the real drivers, as you would say it, for people's success in marketing, and that's what I do now.
Let's talk a bit about your book. Yeah, it's about how marketing leaders can become more influential. Why did it needed this book?
Because there wasn't one. I think that was the starting point. And at McKinsey, I had this idea already. So we need to help marketers. We need to help them be more successful. And then the way McKinsey would do this, they would say, okay, let's look at the global research and insight base, and let's draw from this and let's make it better. And then we looked and there was nothing. There is nothing. Nobody ever, which is surprising, and nobody really ever thought about how marketers survive, how insight leaders survive, how they make it in their job. And I said, okay, we need to write it. And in fact, I didn't write it on my own. It was together with Patty Bartas. And the 12 Powers of a Marketing Leader has indeed become the leadership book for marketers, also because there isn't another one. So it seems we've written something that still, is kind of new in marketing.
So can you condense this 12, probably this 12 are the 12 key learnings, right? This
Well, yeah, yes, exactly. So first off, when you need a book title, you always need something that looks sounds fancy. Ours isn't that fancy, but the 12, of course, came from the research, came from the neural network model that, again, as people know, perhaps you've built, and we found these 12 dimensions. But I think we can talk a little bit about the insights, and from that, I think that the high level idea is that leading customer insights, leading marketing, leading any role that has to do with customers is very different from doing customer insights, from doing marketing. There's a huge difference, and it's massive. And in fact, the success of insight leaders to the largest extent is not driven by functional skills, by your models. Models are important, don't get me wrong, or by the tools you're using, or the company you work in, but it's by your own leadership skills to make the case for your work. And I explain, if you want to explain a little bit about what that means, but that is the high level insight from that book.
So, and now, what are the tricks?
What are the tricks?
How do you get influential?
How do you get influential?
Do's?
Exactly. That's what we want to know. Now, I'll tell you in a minute, but let me, if you don't mind, let me step back just for a moment and let's think about why it is difficult. Because if you want to fix the problem, we need to see what the actual problem is. So let's think about, you are an insight leader, right? You are talented, you have great tools, you work with, you build neural network models, you apply, you understand how drivers work, you really do fantastic work. So technically fantastic work. So you really know what's going on. But then there's a problem, because just think about it. I mean, the first one is go to a conference and listen to the world's latest insight tools, and you will go mad, because there is a gazillion of those options. Now, many of those options aren't necessarily useful. And the useful things we know, right, are the fundamental proper models to build the neural networks, these driver analysis, these basic stats that you can run, also qualitative work. I mean, this is known, but there is every single day there's a new tool coming out. So you always feel like, I don't really know all of this. And while the tools are great, they also take a little bit of confidence away, because you always feel like, oh my God, there's so much more, right? If you know your basic things, you're actually good, but many people don't feel that. Skills gap. The second one is, now you imagine you have your wonderful insights and you understand what customers want and what's important. And now you want to convince people. And then all of a sudden you realize that you don't have the power to make these things happen, because there is the finance department, and there's the operations department, there's the sales department, and there's the shop, the warehouse, and then there is production, and then there are people in the different sales people themselves. Then you have frontline staff, and all of these people don't report to you, right? So but you need them to make your insights happen. So you will always, as an insight leader, have this massive power gap, and it's normal. In fact, if you do customer experience, the only person who can basically call any shots is the CEO, because it's across the firm, right? So it's power gap. And the third one is the trust gap. You have data that proves things from the past, and that's really good. It's also predictive, but you can't really prove that if you change it, the future will definitely be like this, right? And that's why sometimes people think, yeah, there's this report, they've done all this analysis, but is it really true? And now you shouldn't. So, there's a bit of fortune telling involved in what you do. So you will always have that trust gap. So the skills gap, the power gap, and the trust gap, that makes your job tricky. That makes it tricky. And that is why leadership is important versus all the other things that you need. Of course, you need great tools. Otherwise, you're out of the door. That's why this is important. So I'll pause there for a minute, because I love to come with what you can do. But just briefly, Frank, when I talk about skills gap and power gap and trust gap, does it resonate? Is this kind of like aligned with the experience you have with people? And we can talk about how we fix it.
Absolutely. So 100%. And so the root of thinking would be to address those gaps, the trust gap, the power gap.
Yeah. you need, right? I mean, first off, you need good data, right? You need good analysis. And we all know there is good analysis and there's terrible analysis. There's crap in, crap out. You've seen this. There are reports that nobody reads and so on. That is your job to get right. You got to have proper research and models. That's huge. That's hugely important. It's your entry ticket. Okay, a couple of things then you have to get right. And I'll list a few that are probably most important. The first one is you have to be relevant with the work in relation to what's really important inside the firm. And we call this working inside the value creation zone. And what I mean with this is this: you have things you want to bring. You typically want to bring ideas that make customers more happy or attract more customers. So that's relevant in the market. That is your expertise. You know how to do that. But that's only half, because here's what the company wants. If you ask the CEO, what are the 3 things you're worried about right now? It will be very interesting, right? There, for some companies, if the company is in a crisis, right, maybe the CEO worries about cost, about the organization and how to reshuffle things, and maybe about strategy. Maybe customers aren't on that agenda. It could be, right? Then your report will go nowhere. But maybe on the agenda is growth, which is true in many firms. Then the question is interesting. So how can I connect my work to what's important? So make a list of your projects, check out what the priorities are, and then bring it together and see how much of this work is inside that value creation zone. Hugely important. I think it's the tip number 1. If you remember anything from that podcast, that's what I want you to remember. There are a few more things. Sometimes people do not understand why your work is important. And if you bring a lot of reports, then it could be that people saying, yeah, that costs us a lot of money. Is it really helping? You have to make that case. So you have to associate yourself with whatever matters in the firm, like profitable revenue or revenue. And then simply, yeah, but sometimes I hear inside people say, but you can't really do that because it's so indirect and we don't know. Did you ever hear a salesperson say that? Oh, I didn't sell that car. It was the engineers who built it. And then, of course, there was, production. And then we had the wonderful marketing team. And then we had, the accounting. No, they wouldn't say that. It was, I sold that car. So why don't you go and say, okay, I'm part of that 100 million revenue growth goal we're chasing. And I found 55 million last week by doing this and this analysis, which we still have to chase, by the way. By the way, on that note, where is sales on that, right? So that's something you got to associate. I have one more tip for you. Among that, there's a long list of tips in the book, but I'd say one tip is you have very powerful data, and you can. Why is finance powerful, by the way? Why is finance powerful? Just think about it. They're not selling anything. They're not making anything. They're just sitting there and just looking at numbers. And then, no, it's not true. They're doing more. But, why are they so powerful? Because they have data that show how everybody else is performing. Isn't that fascinating? Well, you have the same. Why, if you show week or months by months how this department is helping customers or not, how this department is helping customers or not, how this department is creating growth or not, how this department is delivering that or not, you'll start to be in a very powerful position, because no department leader wants to be in that bottom right corner of the low performing. You can create that data. Think about this. How could you use data that can feed the firm forward, that you show, like finance? It's a very powerful way to use insights. There are a number more, but I think you see where I'm getting at. You got to make yourself relevant, and you got to make your case, and perhaps use some of your insights to push the other people.